My wife let her parents humiliate me at our wedding. That's why I left, and I've never been happier being divorced. I'm terribly confused, and stuck in a pathetic situation. I'm 33 years old. I walked out of my wedding 3 days ago, and I haven't heard a single word from Yaz, 29, since then. It all started with how her parents, Andy and Susan, behaved at the ceremony. They treated me and my parents like garbage. It wasn't the first time they pushed me to the edge, but it was definitely the last, especially because Yaz took their side. She had always been supportive. This was the first time she wasn't. But her absence, and the fact that she hasn't even tried to contact me, told me more than enough. Yaz's parents never thought I was good enough for her, financially. When they found out I worked as an animator, they started treating me like I was beneath them. To them, Yaz should have ended up with a man who had a real job, like her sisters did. One married a real estate businessman. The other, an engineer. Those were respectable careers, in their eyes. I didn't mind that they had high expectations for Yaz. Any parent would. But there's a difference between having expectations, and humiliating someone for their career choice just because it's not conventional. Her mother even tried, multiple times, to convince me to change professions. I stood firm. She called me a stubborn fool. I didn't even bother explaining how complex and profitable animation can be. They were too narrow-minded. To them, animation was just a childish hobby, for people who refused to grow up and do something meaningful. A kid's pastime. That's how her father described it. The first time I visited their house was for Susan's 55th birthday. I had never felt so out of place in my life. At dinner, everyone was saying a few words about Susan. When it was my turn, I was nervous. It was the first time I'd met her, and she hadn't exactly made me feel welcome. Still, I managed to say a few kind, generic words. She didn't even care. She started chatting with someone else while I was still speaking. No, thank you. No acknowledgement. She acted like I didn't exist. Yaz's brothers-in-law were friendly. They treated me like a buddy. But her parents ignored me completely. It was honestly humiliating. I talked to Yaz about it. She admitted her parents were cruel. She told me they just needed more time, that eventually, they'd warm up to me. I tried to be understanding. Older generations don't always understand modern careers. So, I let it slide. From that point on, I kept my distance. I told Yaz clearly. Her parents didn't like me, and I wasn't going to bend over backwards to impress them. I'd be polite, but only when necessary. Nothing more. One of those necessary moments came during our engagement. Yaz called them to invite them, and they threw a tantrum about receiving the invite just 1 week in advance. They wanted to be involved in the planning. Her father said, "How dare you expect Dan and Mike, the other sons-in-law, to attend? They can't just drop everything. They have real jobs." Yaz explained that it would be a small gathering, just parents and a few close friends. But they wanted a big party. They wanted to invite the entire extended family, both her sisters, their husbands, uncles, aunts, the list was endless. They were asking to add around 15 extra guests. Her mother offered, "If you don't have the money for a big party, we'll pay for it." Yaz turned it down. She said it wasn't about the money. We simply wanted a private ceremony. Still, Susan insisted. "At least let your sisters and their husbands come. Adding 4 more people won't hurt." I said, "It's not about 4 people. It's about fairness. I wasn't inviting my brothers, and she shouldn't either. I'm just as close to my brothers as she is to hers." Since we didn't give in, her parents didn't attend. Yaz told me their excuse was that they were busy. They had other plans they couldn't change on such short notice. I couldn't help but wonder, what could be more important than your own daughter's engagement? And if you're going to lie, at least lie about something that matters. The truth came out months later, at Yaz's grandmother's funeral. Dan and Mike congratulated me on the engagement. Her parents gave me a half-hearted congratulations, just for form's sake. I said, "I wish you could have been there." Her dad responded, "We had better things to do with our time." I shot back instantly, "Like what?" He froze for a second. Then he said, "Nothing. We had a cold beer and watched football." Yaz's mom quickly jumped in, said they needed to greet other people, and walked away. I told Yaz about it. She admitted she knew they'd skipped our engagement on purpose, and that this was the excuse they used. I said her dad didn't want to miss Sunday football, because apparently, we invited too late. Now I know what many of you are thinking, I should have broken up with her right then. But listen, this was just a couple of incidents over 4 years. Other than the stuff with her parents, Yaz was amazing. We hardly ever fought. She wasn't demanding. She was the most loving and secure person I'd ever known. But things started to change when we planned the wedding. I told Yaz I wanted a small ceremony. Just a few guests. She insisted on a bigger event, inviting her aunts, uncles, and her sisters with their husbands. She said, "We already had a small engagement. Let's make the wedding a little bigger." And somehow, she convinced me. "Everyone wants their siblings close on their big day," she added. So, I invited mine too. She even offered to cover 70% of the food costs, since she had more guests. It sounded fair. Everything else about the wedding prep went smoothly. But I was dreading what might happen that day. And let me tell you, some of my worst fears came true. I introduced her parents to mine. The atmosphere was ice cold. Andy and Susan barely smiled. But when they found out my parents were teachers, my brother worked in aerospace, and my sister was a schoolteacher, they suddenly took interest again. Andy turned to my parents and said, "So how did this one turn out to be the black sheep?" My parents responded firmly. "We raised our kids to be independent thinkers, capable of making their own decisions. We don't interfere in their lives." That should have been a slap in the face for Andy and Susan. But they're shameless. Andy started telling guests he wanted a small wedding because he couldn't afford a big one. And then he added, "I told him, he's got a big family. Everyone needs to be there. Take out a loan. Go into debt. Do whatever it takes to make it big. At the end of the day, it's his fault for choosing a hobby as a career, instead of a real man's job. Hurts, doesn't it? But wait, there's more." My brother overheard him say. "I told her I'd only bail him out in an extreme situation. I'd do it, for my daughter." And Susan wasn't far behind, her venom just came with a smile. She said, "Take good care of my daughter. You got the whole package. My beautiful girl, and all the wonderful things that come with her. And most importantly, us. We'll always be there for her. I know I'm not as rich as their other sons-in-law. But I'm perfectly capable of providing for and taking care of a family, on my own. My immediate family. That is, my wife. I'm not going to support parasites like my in-laws, if that's what they expect." While I was still trying to process everything, Andy stood up to give a speech. About how he and his wife would do their best to accept the love their daughter had for me. Even though I was far beneath their expectations. He laughed and tried to be funny. But he wasn't. No one, except him and Susan, found it amusing. He also mentioned how he wanted to make sure my children got a proper education. So they wouldn't end up like me. My mom walked out after that. And my dad, he had a pained look on his face, though he smiled slightly to hide it. When I looked at Yaz, she was completely calm. I tried to get up, but she stopped me. Told me to keep it together. "This is our wedding," she said. That's when Susan chimed in. She said she hoped my children would grow up to be respectable and ambitious people. That's when I lost it. She was mocking me, at my own wedding. After I had agreed to marry her daughter. To become part of her family. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed the microphone and said a few words. I thanked them for their speeches. Before turning to introduce my own family, I reminded everyone that Susan was a housewife. Someone who never worked a day to earn her own money. Meanwhile, Andy ran a copy shop. A shop that shut down, right after both his daughters married wealthy men. My words were clear enough for everyone to understand. Yaz tried to stop me, but I pulled away from her. I held the microphone firmly and walked down the aisle. I said, I understand the importance of self-respect. And how shameful it is to live off others. Today, I'm sure Andy and Susan can relate to that. Because unfortunately, they depend on their daughters. Everyone, rest assured. I work hard enough to support my family, and support them well. In fact, don't hesitate to let me know what my fee is. I'm sure, just like your other sons-in-law, I'll be expected to pay a tax for marrying your daughter. Don't worry. I can handle it. I could see them burning with rage. And Yaz? She started screaming at me to stop. Then she began insulting me. When my father tried to calm her down, she shouted at him. Tu no te metas. This has nothing to do with you. That was the final straw. She hadn't said a single word when my parents and I were being humiliated. But the moment her parents got a taste of their own medicine, she exploded. I never even raised my voice at her parents. Even though they 100% deserved it. I put the mic down, loosened my tie, and left. My mother was outside. I hugged her for a minute and told her I was leaving. I was going to preserve my dignity, no matter what it cost me. I returned to the apartment, expecting Yaz to show up eventually. When she didn't, not even that night. I thought maybe she was furious, or maybe her family had taken her away. But today is the third day. Still no sign of her. Not a single call. Not one message. I don't know how common wedding disasters are. But this can't be a good way to start a marriage. Yaz is probably with her parents. And right now, they're the last people I want to see. My parents called yesterday. They congratulated me for standing up for myself. But they were also concerned about the marriage. They told me, if you trust Yaz, you should reach out to her. Be by her side. But also, make sure to cut ties with her family, especially her parents, if you want peace. I told them I loved her. That I completely trusted her. And that, yes, I would have tried to be by her side. But now, it just doesn't make sense anymore. I've known her for years. And if she's ignoring me on purpose, then it means one of two things. Either she wants nothing more to do with me. Or she's punishing me. Either way, it says a lot. If this is what I'm dealing with at the start of a marriage, then maybe this is the end. What do you think? Should I take my parents' advice and reach out to her one last time? Or should I start making moves to end this relationship, once and for all? Update 1. I decided to end my marriage. It was inevitable, and without a doubt, painful. She was the first woman I ever imagined spending the rest of my life with. She stood by me when I chose to quit my job as a financial executive and dive into animation, spending all my savings on the best equipment. She took care of me when I was bankrupt, even though I didn't want her to. I worked hard to ignore her parents' horrible comments. Because of everything we'd been through together. But her outburst at the wedding, and the way she ignored me afterward. It broke me. Clearly, she didn't value me. She didn't feel the need to fix anything. And I was tired of waiting. She treated me like we weren't even married. There was no way I was going to beg her to come back. If she didn't want to make things right, that was fine by me. I consulted my lawyer. I wasn't sure how the process would go. Some friends told me I might need an annulment, since we hadn't lived together after the wedding. But turns out, our situation didn't qualify for that. So I had to go through a regular divorce. It took about a month for the lawyer to send her the paperwork. I was expecting some kind of response after that, and I got it. Instead of Yaz, her parents showed up at my door to collect her things. They looked happier than ever. I told them, "I'll save you the trouble, her stuff's already in the storage unit. Go get it." They took it and left without saying a word. I guess they learned their lesson at the wedding. They couldn't push me around anymore. Shortly after, Yaz signed the papers, and the process began. Since it's uncontested and we barely have any shared assets. Just a joint savings account we opened a year before the wedding. I'm hoping it'll be quick. Now, the juicy part of the update. Mike, Yaz's brother-in-law. He's the engineer married to her middle sister, Hannah. He reached out to me, to thank me. Apparently, the drama from my wedding worked in his favor. He was shocked to learn that Andy and Susan had been surviving off the money their daughters gave them. He had no idea his wife was withdrawing hundreds of dollars every month and handing it over to her parents. Hannah had access to their joint account. This guy was working 10-hour days, busting his ass to give his family a good life. He trusted his wife with their finances. And she was secretly funneling money to her narcissistic, entitled parents. After my wedding speech, he asked Hannah if there was any truth to what I said. She told him I was just being bitter, and that it wasn't true. So he checked the account himself, and found the transactions. When he confronted Hannah, she initially brushed it off as random spending. But he pressed harder. She finally broke down in tears and confessed. It was a loan. Her parents had promised to pay it back. She said Andy had to shut down his store during COVID and never recovered. So she was just helping him, for now. Mike told her. You can't give someone a monthly loan. What's Andy's plan to repay it? Is he opening another business? Getting a job? How's he planning to make a living? She didn't have an answer. That was the end of it for Mike. He added himself as the primary holder of the joint account. Cut off her access to the card. And warned her, if she ever spent another cent on them behind his back, there would be serious consequences. After venting to me, I laughed and said, well, at least someone got something useful out of my disaster wedding. We both laughed. He told me he had no idea his in-laws were that cruel to me. They'd always been sweet to him. Well, of course they were, he makes good money. Then he suggested I reach out to Dan, the husband of Yaz's oldest sister. He didn't attend the wedding due to work. Maybe he was also in the dark. I politely declined. I told him I was no longer part of that family. And I had no interest in getting involved in their drama again. But I told him he could do it, since he was still technically part of the family. So Mike spoke to Dan and asked if he knew. Dan said his wife had told him Andy and Susan needed financial help early on in their marriage, and that he had agreed to support them. Andy made enough, and giving them a few thousand wasn't a big deal. She got married before COVID. So Andy's store closing had nothing to do with it. They had always relied on their daughter's allowances. Mike messages me now and then. I wouldn't call us friends. But he seems like a good guy. Last week, he called again. Told me his marriage is in crisis. Hannah keeps arguing and complaining, because she can't help her parents anymore. He says he's going easy on her, because they're expecting a baby. And me? I thank my lucky stars that I escaped this madness before it was too late. The divorce will be finalized soon. And I'll officially be a free man. Update 2. If we were still married, today would have been our first anniversary. And even now, Yaz's attitude toward the divorce still surprises me every time I think about it. She ghosted me completely. Mike told me she was doing fine. And that helped me let go faster than I normally would have. The divorce is already finalized. And I've spent the last 10 or 11 months working harder than I ever have before. With no other obligations. I've been able to dedicate myself 100% to this. And when you focus on one goal, just one, instead of juggling several, things tend to go pretty well. Back when the wedding was being planned, I couldn't fully commit to my work. But now? I'd say it's even more than 100%. It's 110%. When everything ended, I felt like I had nothing left to lose. Yaz wanted to go to Hawaii for our honeymoon. I had been saving to make that dream come true. But after the wedding disaster, I took that money and upgraded my gear. Leveled up my entire setup, so I could offer better performances. And start charging more for my work. Not just that, I'm expanding. I've got enough equipment now to deliver different types of shows. I created paid online courses. I deepened my knowledge. And now that's bringing in a steady stream of income. It takes up all of my time. But it's absolutely worth it. I think I can work on this for a while. Grow it big enough to make a solid financial difference. And then maybe retire. Mike and I have stayed in touch this whole time. We even hang out sometimes. Turns out, he's seriously considering separation. Because he can no longer trust his wife. Over the past few months, she kept siphoning money away. And whenever he confronted her, she used her pregnancy and postpartum recovery as excuses. Her parents also got involved, lecturing him about being an emotionally understanding husband. He kept quiet until his son was born. But now, he's had enough. He's already living separately and talking to a lawyer. His only concern is that his son won't have a normal family. I didn't tell him what to do. He's a grown man, perfectly capable of making his own decisions. Sometimes, I wonder how Andy and Susan can be so selfish, so self-centered, to the point where they're willing to ruin their daughters' marriages for their own personal gain. They've already destroyed one marriage and a half. Soon, it'll be two. For now, Dan is still going along with everything. But I don't think that'll last much longer. Update 3. Here's a new update. Mike didn't go through with the divorce. Yaz stepped in, just in time. And opened Hannah's eyes. She showed her the real face of their parents. After the disaster that was my wedding, Andy and Susan took Yaz back to their house. And apparently, they turned her against me. She was hurt that I humiliated her parents in front of everyone. Yes, money is a sore spot for them. And my speech exposed the truth. Not just to Mike, but to other family members as well. Andy and Susan cried and complained for days, saying they were terribly humiliated just for taking a few small loans from their daughters. They said things like, "We raised our daughters. We sacrificed everything for them for 3 decades. And now that we're going through a rough patch financially, we can't expect our children to help us out a little? It's evil, now we're being pointed at and shamed in public." My answer? Yes. But I don't think they care. That emotional manipulation worked. And Yaz ghosted me. Which eventually led to our divorce. However, shortly after, she began to see through their game. When her parents asked her to pay rent for living with them, she quickly moved into a friend's place. And later, found a place of her own. Her mother constantly reminded her not to repeat her mistakes. And that this time, she needed to find someone suitable. And by suitable, she meant someone rich. Someone who could become their next piggy bank. Yaz snapped. She cut off all contact with her mother. Apparently, she told Hannah and Mike that she wanted to come find me and apologize. But she felt too ashamed. And she knew I wouldn't take her back. So she chose to stay quiet and keep her distance. For now, Yaz and Hannah have cut off all financial support to Andy and Susan. Mike and Hannah are planning to move out of state. To get away from all the toxicity. Even knowing all this, I have no intention of getting back with Yaz. Because her remorse can't undo the damage she and her parents caused me. We're better off apart. That's all for now. If anything else comes up related to this mess, and I really hope it doesn't, I'll definitely leave another update. Update 4. I've got a long update. Maybe not in word count. I'll know that once I'm done writing. But definitely in terms of everything that's happened. A lot has gone on with nearly everyone. So, I'm going to try organizing it by importance. Some things are more relevant than others. For example, Mike and Hannah moved to another part of the country. And while that's good news, it's not nearly as important as the other things I'll share here. I'm still in contact with Mike. He tells me that getting away from his in-laws has opened up a whole new world for their marriage. It's like being stuck in the gravitational field of my ex-in-laws created some kind of magnetic pull. Now, they have a normal relationship, one of love and respect. Or at least, that's what Mike tells me. I'm not there to see it, but as long as he's happy, I'm happy for him too. And I have my own reasons to be happy. My business is thriving. Back when I first mentioned it, both online commenters and my ex-in-laws mocked me for quitting a well-paying job to pursue animation. Maybe you'll need some details to be convinced. Or maybe you prefer living in your own little bubble. When I said animation, I wasn't talking about kids' parties, twisting balloons, dressed as a clown, charging $20 an hour. I don't want to give away too many specifics. But let's just say, if your clients are famous rappers or athletes throwing events, and they need a live performer, you're talking about $10,000 or $15,000 per night. Just a few gigs a month, and the income is excellent. Add to that my paid course, where I teach about this profession. You can make $40,000 to $50,000 a month. And with that kind of money, you could retire in a few years. But hey, if you still think quitting my $65,000 a year finance job was a bad idea, good for you. And no, I wasn't making that much yet when I was about to get married. But I was doing just fine. My ex-in-laws just couldn't see the potential. To them, a normal, cubicle job was what they thought would benefit them. Anyway, the world is full of people with short-sighted vision. I might go deeper into that later. Especially when I share more about Yaz's brothers-in-law and my ex-in-laws. Now, on to Yaz. She finally spoke to me. I guess she worked up the courage to apologize. We talked for a bit. Then she said sorry, for everything. I accepted her apology. I hold no grudge against her. So I wasn't going to be petty and say, I don't forgive you, just to upset her. My life is way too good right now to get angry about small things. After she apologized, she just stared at me, like she was waiting for something more. I didn't know what, so I just stared back. Maybe she expected a kiss or something. I'm not sure. But judging from what she said afterward, I think she believed my forgiveness was the first step toward getting back together. I had to shut that down quickly. As soon as she started talking about us, I stopped her. Because I have no reason to go back. We had our chance. She wasted it. Now, I'm seeing someone new. And there are no in-laws in sight, because hers have passed away. Not that I'm glad they're gone. But their absence definitely makes things easier. And from what my new girlfriend tells me, they actually seemed like decent people. That brings us back to the in-laws who weren't decent. The former ones. Dan, Yaz's oldest sister's husband, was laid off a few months ago. Nothing unusual, just corporate restructuring and all that. It happens when you work for someone else. The day they don't need you, you're out. And in this case, it wasn't just a career blow. It hit their marriage, too. When his in-laws started pressuring him to find another job and resume contributing financially, it was too much. They had already lost 2 income sources. Losing a third was devastating. I think this update is getting longer than I expected. So I'll just say this. Dan filed for divorce. That was that. Then Dan came to my house one day and asked if he could sleep in my camper. But I told him no, because I never had one. Yeah. I like that story. Kinda like the mama bear one. That one always makes me laugh the most. That's how I knew when I changed the real names for this story. I had to use that one. But no, Dan never asked to use my camper. And I never slept in one. After being thrown out of my own wedding. Because I was never thrown out. And I never had no place to sleep. Just a little joke. Now, all jokes aside. My ex-father-in-law finally got a job. I don't know what kind of work he's doing. But he has to work. Because he can't exploit his daughters anymore. He's still got one card left to play. The newly divorced daughter. But let's hope she learned something from the other two. And when she marries again, it's not for the money. That's it for now. To me, all of this feels far behind me now. Especially considering I started posting about this almost 3 years ago. I don't regret it. It's been fun in its own way. Especially these last few updates. Hopefully I'll have another one to share in the future. But if not, it's been a good ride, don't you think?